I found the envelope in the mail pile wedged between a car insurance renewal and a coupon booklet for local pizza. Pale pink, thick cardstock, the kind that practically screamed boutique printer. My name was handwritten in metallic ink, just David, no Dad. No return address, but I didn't need one. I'd recognize that distant handwriting anywhere. I set the rest of the mail down and opened it carefully, sliding the invitation out like it might bruise. A shower, it said. For Rachel. Saturday afternoon, 2 weeks from now. A place I'd never been to, a country club north of town, the sort with valet parking and canapes that look like art. The invitation was pastel and pristine, full of designer fonts and vague sentiment. Please join us in celebrating the upcoming arrival of baby Thompson. No mention of grandparents, no signature, no warmth. A barcode at the bottom linked to a registry longer than a grocery receipt. High chairs that cost more than my first car. Organic diapers. A stroller with Bluetooth speakers. I turned it over, searching for a note, a message, anything. But it was just mass-produced pleasantry and silent demand. I hadn't spoken to Rachel in nearly 4 months. Not since the last time she needed something. And now, here she was, not reaching out, not calling, not visiting, just sending paper and expecting presents. I held the invitation against the late afternoon light, half hoping something more might be revealed. An apology in invisible ink, a postscript, nothing. I stood there in the kitchen, one hand resting on the counter Rachel used to sit at while doing homework, swinging her legs and asking questions about everything. Her laugh used to fill this house like music. Now it was just dust and echoes. I slid the card back into the envelope and placed it on the table beside the others. I stared at it for a long time. It wasn't the invitation itself that stunned it, was how little effort it took her to send it. How easily she folded me into the logistics of her life, without ever opening a door to her heart. I made a cup of tea and sat in silence. Then, I picked up the phone. Her number was still saved under Rachel My Girl, though the label hadn't felt right in years. I stared at the screen until it dimmed, pressed redial before I could talk myself out of it. She answered on the third ring. "Hey," she said, like I was a dentist's office confirming an appointment. "Hi, sweetheart," I said. The word came out brittle. "Got something in the mail today." "Oh, the shower invite?" Her voice was bright, too bright, like she was trying to sound cheerful and bored at the same time. "Yeah, Isabella handled most of it. We used this new site, it automates everything." I paused. I noticed. She didn't respond. "Wasn't sure if you meant for me to get it." A sigh barely disguised. "Of course I did, Dad. You're invited." "That's good to hear," I said, trying not to flinch at how transactional it sounded. "Was just a little surprised. Haven't heard from you in a while." There was static silence, the kind people fill with nothing. "It's been crazy," she said finally. "Work's insane, and the pregnancy stuff, you know how it is." "I wouldn't," I said softly. "Your mother handled that." I just held her hand and hoped for the best. She made a noise, a clipped laugh. "Yeah, well, different times." "I suppose they are," I said. "Country club's a bit far out. You need help setting up, or—" "No, we've got it covered," she cut in. "It's more of a drop-in thing anyway. Just gifts and mingling, light food. Don't bring anything weird, okay?" Weird. That word sat sharp in my chest. "I'll try my best," I said. "Is there a theme?" "A theme?" she echoed. "You know, colors, animals, something for the baby?" "Oh," she said, distracted now. "Yeah, clouds or rainbows or whatever. Look, Dad, I've got to jump. Zoom call in 5. Just RSVP online, all right?" Before I could respond, the line clicked. Not a goodbye, not a thank you, just silence, then dial tone. I set the phone down and looked around my kitchen. Stillness. The tea had gone cold. I stared at the invitation again. I wasn't sure what hurt more, that she hadn't called in months, or that when she finally did, it felt like I was talking to a stranger. The night Rachel was born, it snowed hardened of those thick, silent blizzards that makes the whole world feel paused. The roads were slick, the hospital was understaffed, and my hands wouldn't stop shaking. Not from the cold, but from the weight of what was coming. My wife Joanne gripped my hand through every contraction like it was the only solid thing keeping her on earth. She was small, quiet, always had been, but that night she roared like something ancient. Hours passed. The nurses looked exhausted. I kept wiping sweat from her brow, murmuring nonsense like, "You're doing great," when I had no clue if she was. And then Rachel arrived. They placed her in Joanne's arms, all swaddled and screaming. I didn't cry out right away. I just stared at this impossibly tiny person who now depended on us for everything, and then I looked at Joanne. She wasn't smiling. She wasn't crying either. She just stared off into a corner like she wasn't fully there. The nurses said it was normal baby blues, exhaustion, hormones. But weeks passed, and Joanne didn't bounce back. She stopped singing around the house, stopped eating with us. She'd hold Rachel, but she never seemed present. I took on the night feedings not because I wanted to be a hero, but because I was scared to leave them alone too long. We couldn't afford help. I was working 10-hour shifts laying rebar and then pulling another 5 on call for a guy I knew in roofing. The coffee tasted like motor oil back then, and my body hurt all the time, but I'd come home and rock Rachel to sleep in that old chair by the heater. Sometimes I'd talk to her just so the house wouldn't feel so damn quiet. I used to think love was something you said out loud, but back then love meant overtime hours. It meant frozen dinners and holding your wife's hand while she cried in the dark, unable to explain why. It meant watching your newborn sleep and wondering how you'd keep any of it together. Somehow, we did. Joanne died a week after Rachel's 8th birthday. Stroke, sudden, no warning. One day we were watching cartoons in bed as a family, and the next I was explaining heaven to a little girl who still believed in the tooth fairy. I remember standing in the funeral home, Rachel's small hand gripping my coat, asking, "Is Mommy sleeping?" and lying because I couldn't bear the truth. After that, it was just us. I kept the house clean. I packed her lunches. I learned to braid hair badly. At night, I'd collapse onto the couch after work, muscles on fire, only to remember there were still spelling tests to review, bills to pay, laundry to fold. There were times I'd stare at the microwave counting down and wonder how I'd survive the next 5 minutes, let alone the next decade. But I did, because she needed me. I remember sewing her Halloween costume Belle from Beauty and the Beast. I couldn't sew for crap, but she said it was perfect. I remember holding her through night terrors, promising her the shadows couldn't hurt her. I remember skipping meals so she'd have what she needed for her school field trip. And through it all, I never let her see me break, not once. We didn't have much, just a one-story fixer-upper with drafty windows and hand-me-down furniture, but I made sure it always felt like home. Sunday pancakes, Christmas lights, even if half didn't work. Her artwork taped to the fridge like priceless masterpieces. I worked construction by day and fatherhood by night. My hands were always calloused, my back always aching, but Rachel never lacked for love. I made damn sure of that. So when she says now, "I never asked to be born," like my devotion was some kind of imposition, I think of that 8-year-old in the yellow princess dress, twirling through the living room I'd cleaned after a double shift, beaming up at me like I'd hung the moon. And I wonder, when did she forget? Teenage years crept in like rust slow at first, then everywhere. By the time Rachel hit 16, everything I said was either wrong, outdated, or controlling. Curfews were unfair. Chores were slave labor. Her tone turned sharp, her eyes harder. I'd ask about her day, and she'd shrug. Fine, always fine, until the day it wasn't. She'd always been strong-willed. Joanne used to say she had fire in her bones. But this wasn't just fire, this was frost, too, something cold behind her heat. She stayed out late. Lied about where she was. Her phone, which I'd bought, became a wall. I wasn't dad anymore. I was a security guard, a wallet, a nuisance. The first time she snuck out, I waited in the living room until 2 a.m., lights off, jaw clenched. She came in smelling like cheap perfume and teenage arrogance. I didn't yell. I just asked why. She rolled her eyes. Because I wanted to. That's when we started locking horns. I grounded her, she screamed. I took her phone. She smashed a mug. Once, during a particularly ugly night, I said, "I'm trying to protect you," she shot back. "You're trying to control me." We stood there, toe to toe, her arms crossed, my heart cracking wide open. And then she said it. The sentence that's been echoing in my bones ever since. "I never asked to be born." It hit me like a sucker punch to the gut. Like all those years of sacrifice, of scraped knuckles and missed meals and late-night lullabies, had been weighed and found meaningless. I stared at her, that child I'd raised with my whole soul, and I saw nothing but disdain. I wanted to scream back, to list every choice I'd made to keep her safe, but I didn't. I just nodded once and walked away, not because she was right, but because I was too tired to keep proving I was. Her acceptance letter from Washington State came on a Thursday. Thick envelope, gold seal, congratulatory script. I held it like it was the key to her future and maybe, just maybe, the bridge back to the girl I used to know. We sat down that night. I'd made her favorite lasagna from scratch, garlic bread, even a little sparkling cider. "I'll cover tuition," I said. "Not loans, not debt, full ride, books too." She didn't react right away, just stabbed her fork into her plate. "That's generous." "It's not generosity, Rachel. It's what your mother and I always planned." She looked up slowly, eyes narrowing. "I'm not going." I blinked. "What?" "I'm moving in with Lucas," she said flatly. "He got a job downstate. I want to be with him." I didn't yell. I just set my fork down and asked, "Why would you throw away an education for a boy who barely texts you back?" She bristled. "Because it's my life, not yours. You don't get to decide anymore." I tried to stay calm. I told her Lucas had no degree, no job history, no plan, that the world was cruel and she was giving up the armor she needed to survive. She stood up, grabbed her plate, and turned her back to me. "I'm not asking for your permission, and I don't want your money. Rachel, listen." "No," she snapped. "I'm done listening. I've listened my whole life." She left that night. A week later, her number stopped working. I didn't hear from her for almost a year. No texts, no calls, no updates. I sent emails, short ones, never guilt trips, just, "Hope you're okay," or "Let me know if you need anything." Silence. I kept her bedroom exactly the same. Still do, just in case. But even then, I think I knew she'd made a choice. And it wasn't just about college. It was about erasing me from the picture of her future. Funny thing is, I still would have paid. All she had to do was ask. The call came on a Wednesday afternoon. I was in the garage, sorting through an old box of Joann's winter coats. It had been years, but I still couldn't bring myself to give them away. The phone buzzed in my shirt pocket, and when I saw her name on the screen, Rachel, mobile, my heart jumped like a kid seeing a long-lost friend. I answered on the second ring. "Hi, Dad." Her voice was flat, practiced, not cold, but not warm either. "Rachel, been a while." "Yeah, I guess." She paused, just long enough to make me think this was a courtesy call. "So, I'm pregnant." Silence stretched out like highway between towns. I waited for laughter, or tears, or something resembling joy, but nothing came. "Oh," I managed, gripping the workbench. "Congratulations, sweetheart, that's big news." "Yeah, figured you should know." That was it. No excitement. No talk of nursery colors or due dates. No, "You're going to be a grandpa," like in the movies. Just facts, like she was informing me the cable bill was overdue. "Do you need anything?" I asked, cautiously hopeful. "I'm okay for now. Just thought you'd want to be informed. You know, as the biological connection." The words hit sideways. "Of course," I said quietly. "Well, I've got to run. Ultrasound appointment." The line went dead a second later. No "love you," no talk soon, just a door slammed shut over the phone line. I stood in the quiet of the garage for a long time, the coat still piled at my feet. There was a time when she'd tell me everything: skinned knees, first crushes, teenage dreams. And now I was just another person on the notification list, another name she had to check off. She was having a baby, and somehow I felt more alone than ever. It started with a link. One of those curated baby registry's white noise machines, ergonomic bassinets, bottle sets that cost more than my monthly grocery bill. No message, no note. Just the link, dropped into my text inbox like a bill due. I ignored it at first, thought maybe it was a mistake. Then came the second one, then a Venmo request. Formula Plus prenatal vitamins, 120. Still no, please. Still no, Dad, would you mind? Just expectations. She never called to explain, never asked how I was. The messages came like invoices from a company I hadn't hired. This is the glider we're looking at. It's good for back support. We need help with the crib. Can you cover shipping? I know you probably haven't seen the list yet, but time's ticking. I wanted to believe she was overwhelmed. That pregnancy had her short on grace. But deep down I knew. This wasn't stress, it was entitlement. Every time my phone pinged, it was another reminder that somewhere along the line, our relationship had become transactional. I wasn't a father anymore, I was a resource, a walking debit card, a placeholder. I sent a small amount the first time, $50. No reply, no thanks. Just a new message a week later asking for more. And then came the guilt. A text that said, "It's really sad that my own father won't support his grandchild. Mom would have, I bet." That one made me sit down. Joanne, God rest her, would have helped. That part was true, but she also would have expected Rachel to call, to show respect, to remember that love isn't owed, it's earned. That night, I opened the registry again. I scrolled past the designer baby clothes and artisanal diaper caddies, and then I closed the page. She hadn't asked me to be involved. Not really. She'd just told me to pay for it. It was supposed to be a simple Sunday barbecue. My nephew Ethan had just gotten engaged, and his fiancée wanted to meet the family. We all gathered at my sister's place plastic tables in the backyard, folding chairs, coleslaw in ceramic bowls, a mix of laughter, clinking glasses, and secondhand stories. Rachel arrived late, belly showing now, in a tight sweater and that same guarded expression she wore like armor. She greeted me with a kiss on the cheek hollow, obligatory, and immediately joined the circle of younger cousins talking about baby names and registries. I stayed near the grill, flipping burgers, watching her from a quiet distance. I didn't expect affection anymore, but I had hoped just once for pride. For her to say, "That's my dad over there, the man who raised me." Instead, I got fire and smoke. It happened after someone, Ethan, I think, asked what it had been like growing up without a mom. "A fair question," said with warmth. Rachel didn't hesitate. "Oh, you know, it was fine, but honestly, I kind of raised myself." The words landed like cold water on hot coals. "Dad meant well," she continued, laughing a little too loud. "But he was always working, or tired, or weird about things. It's not like I asked to be born." Silence. Conversations around us stalled like a car hitting a tree. I set the spatula down slowly, didn't say a word, just stood there and let the heat from the grill blur the edges of my vision. A few people laughed awkwardly, tried to move on. I didn't. I walked away. Into the house, out the front door, down the block. No one followed. For years, I told myself her bitterness was a phase, that she'd come around, but hearing her say that again, this time, as a woman about to become a mother herself and in front of others, that was different. She hadn't just rejected me. She had erased me. That night I sat alone in my living room. The lights were off, the air was still, and the only sound was the slow tick of the mantel clock, Joanne's favorite. I pulled the old photo albums down from the shelf, not out of nostalgia, but necessity. Page after page of her life. Rachel in a yellow jumper, gumming mashed carrots. Rachel on her first bike, helmet too big. Rachel in her prom dress, awkward and radiant. Photos I'd taken, moments I'd protected, milestones I'd paid for, worked for, showed up for. I ran a thumb along the edge of one picture, her asleep in the car after a soccer game, mouth open, cheeks pink with sun. I'd carried her inside and tucked her into bed that night, muscles aching from a full day on the job. She never remembered things like that. She only remembered what I didn't do. The room felt heavy, but not with grief, with clarity. I realized I'd spent years auditioning for her approval, twisting myself into someone she might one day call Dad with warmth again. But love isn't a trophy, and dignity isn't something you surrender to keep a seat at a table where you're not welcome. That night, I stopped being the man waiting for scraps of kindness. I wasn't angry. I wasn't bitter. I was simply done. Done begging. Done buying my place in her life. Done performing. The next morning, I slid her baby shower invitation into the trash with the junk mail. No drama, no announcement. Just silence. Because silence, I've learned, is its own kind of boundary, and for once in my life, I intended to hold it. We met at the same diner we've been going to every Wednesday for 20 years. Booth by the window, chipped Formica table, waitress who refills your coffee without asking. Harold was already there when I arrived, flipping through the classifieds like he still believed in printed news. "You look like hell," he said before I even sat down. "I've had better weeks." I ordered black coffee and a dry wheat toast. My appetite hadn't come back since the barbecue. Harold waited until the waitress walked away before folding his paper. "So, what's she done now?" I told him. "Not everything, just enough. The pregnancy, the silence, the demands, the line I never asked to be born." I tried to keep my voice steady, but it cracked anyway. Harold leaned back and whistled low. "She really said that? Again? In front of people?" "Yeah," I said. Like I was a bad choice she never signed up for. He shook his head. "You worked 2 jobs for how many years to raise her?" 15. "And took no money from anyone?" "Not a cent." He scoffed. "And she thinks you owe her?" I didn't answer. Harold set his coffee down, hard. "You don't owe her anything, Dave, not anymore. You gave her your youth, your back, your wallet, and your heart. And now she wants the rest of your pride too? Screw that." I stared out the window. A mother walked by holding a toddler's hand. The little girl was tugging her toward a bench, and the mother followed, smiling. "She's my daughter," I said. It came out more like an apology than a fact. Harold leaned in, voice low but firm. "She was. But now? She's a grown woman with her own kid on the way, and she's treating you like a charity case she's tired of pretending to thank. That's not family, Dave. That's exploitation." I didn't argue. I just nodded slowly, the words sinking in like warm bourbon bitter, but somehow comforting. "You don't owe her anything," he repeated. "Not anymore." It started as a list things I remembered that I thought she might have forgotten. The first night without Joanne, the time I missed a shift to come to her science fair, the winter I worked on Christmas Eve laying roof tiles in freezing rain so she could have the dollhouse with the chimney she wanted. Then it turned into a letter. "Rachel, you probably won't read this, and that's okay. This isn't for guilt, it's not for pity. It's just the truth from a man who tried his best. You once told me you never asked to be born. I know. I didn't ask to lose your mother, either. I didn't ask to raise a child alone in a world I barely understood. I didn't ask to sleep on the couch with the TV on just to drown out the silence. But I did it. For you. I gave you every ounce I had, and when that wasn't enough, I gave more. Not because I expected a thank you, but because I loved you so damn much I didn't know how to stop giving. Now, it feels like all that sacrifice has turned to resentment, and that's what hurts most. Not the money, not the distance, but how easily you've rewritten history as if I was just someone you endured. You're about to become a parent, and someday, that child might throw your love back in your face too. When they do, I hope you'll remember this letter. And maybe, just maybe, you'll understand what it feels like to love someone more than they'll ever know, and still not be enough. I'll always care about you, but I won't keep bleeding for someone who never looks back. Dad. I folded the letter, slid it into an envelope, and tucked it into the back of my desk drawer. No stamp, no address. Some truths aren't meant to be mailed. Some are just meant to be written, read by the man who needed to say them, and then put away like an old wound you finally stopped picking at. I turned 71 on a Tuesday. Nothing fancy, just another morning with the smell of coffee and the creak of my old knees reminding me I was still here. The weather was nice. Sunlight came in warm through the kitchen blinds, the kind of light Joanne used to say made the house feel like it had a soul. I made myself eggs and toast, poured the good maple syrup on top just because. Sometimes you take your celebrations where you can get them. Mid-morning, I checked the mailbox. Nothing. No card, not even a text. No call from Rachel. I told myself she might be busy. Maybe the baby was making things hard. Maybe she'd call later. Maybe she forgot what day it was, not out of malice, just distraction. But sometime around 4 p.m., my phone buzzed. My heart jumped. It always does. It was a message from her. No greeting, no happy birthday, just a link and 3 words. We still need this. Attached was a screenshot of a baby monitor, top of the line, 389.99. I stared at it for a long time. No one else remembered either, not really. My sister left a voicemail about a family reunion next month. Harold texted a sarcastic, "Still breathing?" and offered to buy me pancakes that weekend. But Rachel, my only child? Nothing but a product suggestion. No cake, no call, no trace of the little girl who used to make me lopsided birthday cards with glitter and stickers that said, "One Dad." Just a reminder that I was now a line on her budget sheet. That night, I had a slice of pie alone, lit a candle, sang to myself under my breath, not out of sadness, but to mark the moment. To remind myself I was still someone worth celebrating, even if no one else noticed. The next morning, I went back to her registry. I don't know why. Habit, maybe. Or curiosity. Maybe some lingering instinct that said, "Be the better man." I clicked through item after item, everything curated to perfection. Organic cotton onesies, noise-canceling baby headphones, a diaper bag that looked like it belonged on a fashion runway. Then I saw the stroller. E by Arshio. It had 4-wheel suspension, leather handlebars, built-in GPS, and a feature called Climate Control for Optimal Infant Comfort. I laughed, not because it was funny, but because something in me finally broke. She had picked the most expensive option, no hesitation, no alternatives, no, "We're trying to stay within budget," or "Don't worry, Dad, this isn't your problem, just expectation." Like I was a credit card that couldn't say no. She hadn't asked if I could afford it. She hadn't considered what I might need. Hell, I still drove a truck older than her boyfriend and patched the roof with sealant I got on discount. But here she was, clicking Add to Registry, like it was Monopoly money. I hovered over the Purchase Now button, my hand shook not with indecision, but with anger I hadn't allowed myself to feel in years. I closed the tab. Not this time. Let someone else be the wallet. I'd been the father. That should have been enough. The carpet in the living room used to be seafoam green. Ugly thing, always held onto crumbs and pet hair like it was sentimental. But we kept it, because that's where Rachel took her first steps. Joanne was sitting on the couch, a blanket over her legs and a bowl of Cheerios in her lap. It was Sunday morning, I remember that much. The sun was spilling through the window just right, that soft golden hour light that made everything feel possible. Rachel was holding onto the edge of the coffee table, cheeks red, legs wobbling like cooked spaghetti. She kept looking between us, her little brows furrowed like she was doing math in her head. 1 step, then 2, then a fall on her diaper-padded bottom. Joanne clapped like she'd won the lottery. "You did it, baby," she laughed, eyes wide with disbelief. "David, get the camera." I didn't. I just stood there, stunned, watching this tiny person stand up, determined, and try again. She made it 3 full steps that time, arms out, face focused like a tightrope walker. When she reached Joanne, the both of them collapsed into each other, laughing, squealing, crying. I joined them, wrapping them both up in a hug. Rachel patted my face with her little hands and said, "I did it." Joanne kissed my cheek and whispered, "That's our girl." I think of that moment now, how proud we were, how that tiny act, those 3 steps, felt like a lifetime's worth of progress. And now, She's walking away again. Only this time, it's not into our arms. It's into a world where we apparently never mattered. It was late afternoon when Ethan stopped by. My sister's boy. Always liked him, good head on his shoulders, straight talker. He brought over a six-pack and a bag of takeout from that Thai place we both liked. We didn't say much at first, just ate in the living room while the old ceiling fan clicked softly above us. Eventually, he set his beer down and looked at me square. "Uncle Dave, can I say something you might not like?" I nodded. "You're old enough to earn that right." He hesitated, then said, "Rachel treats you like an ATM, and I think everyone sees it but you." The words were blunt, but not cruel. Just a clean cut, the kind that heals better than 1,000 polite lies. I didn't answer right away. He continued, "She doesn't visit unless she needs something. She sends bills instead of birthday cards. And that baby shower? She didn't even say your name when people asked about her dad. Just said, 'He's around.' That's how she sees me now," I said quietly. "No, that's how she lets you see yourself," he said. "You keep showing up for a daughter who stopped showing up for you a long time ago." I stared at the photo on the mantel, Joanne in her gardening hat, Rachel beside her, covered in mud and joy. That used to be real. "You don't deserve this, Uncle Dave," Ethan said. "You're a good man. Hell, you're the reason half this family knows how to hold a hammer and show up on time." I smiled at that, a small, tired smile. "Maybe it's time," I said. "Time for what?" "To stop hoping she'll be someone she's not." Ethan nodded. "About damn time." We clinked bottles, said nothing more. The silence between us felt more healing than words. It was past 9 p.m. when I finally decided to text her. I sat in the same recliner I used to rock her to sleep in, the leather cracked and softened with time. My thumb hovered over the phone for a long while. I didn't want to start a fight. I just wanted clarity. Maybe even respect. Me. "Hi, Rachel. Wanted to check in about the baby shower. Just wondering if you'd like me to be there or if it's more of a courtesy invite." I stared at the message before hitting send. Read it 5 times. No guilt, no pressure, just honest. She responded 10 minutes later. No punctuation, no greeting. "Rachel, you should be there. It's the least you can do." That was it. One line. Not, "We'd love to see you." Not, "It would mean a lot." Just an obligation dressed up as a sentence. The least I could do. I sat there rereading those 6 words, trying to remember the last time she spoke to me like a person instead of a transaction. I typed out a dozen replies, deleted them all. Eventually, I just turned off the phone. She didn't want me there because she valued my presence. She wanted me there because she felt entitled to it. The next morning I woke up early. The kind of early where the house is still dark and your thoughts are too loud. I brewed coffee the way Joanne liked it, strong, a splash of cream. 2 sugar sands sat at the table with the quiet. For weeks, I'd gone back and forth. Tell her I'm not coming? Make an excuse? Go and pretend? But the truth sat plain as daylight. I wasn't wanted. I was expected. There's a difference. I thought about Ethan's words, about Harold's, about every time I'd tried to earn a place in Rachel's life like it was something I had to qualify for. And then I thought about what Joanne would say. "She deserves a father who shows up," Joanne once told me. And I had, over and over. But this wasn't showing up. This was surrender. I wasn't going to her baby shower, not out of anger, not as revenge, just as a final, quiet line in the sand. If she asked why, I'd tell her the truth. Because I'm tired of begging to be treated like family. That day, I bought a small wooden box from a local craftsman. Inside, I placed an old photo of Joanne holding baby Rachel on the front porch. I wrote a short note. In case the baby ever asks what love looks like. I wrapped it gently, put it in a brown paper bag, and left it by the front door. It would be delivered by courier. As for me, I planned to be nowhere near the country club that Saturday. I had better things to do than audition for fatherhood in front of strangers. The day arrived just like any other, except it wasn't. Sunlight stretched across the kitchen table like it always did. The house creaked its usual complaints as it warmed up from the overnight chill. Outside, the birds didn't care what day it was, but I did. It was Rachel's baby shower. 10:00 a.m. The time listed on the invitation for setup, 12:00 sharp. The celebration officially started. I imagined the table arrangements, the mimosa bar, the expensive white and gold decorations curated from her Pinterest dreams. Me? I made chili. Joanne's recipe, the one with cocoa powder and cinnamon, sounds strange, but it works. She used to say it tasted like home. I hadn't made it in years. Felt like the right day to remember what love really was. I chopped onions slowly, letting the scent fill the room, simmered the tomatoes, stirred the beef in the old cast-iron pot we got as a wedding gift. No rush, no noise, just rhythm and breath. Around noon, the first text came. "Rachel, where are you?" Then another. "Dad, seriously, are you coming or not?" 3 missed calls. Then 5. By 12:30, my phone buzzed non-stop. She wasn't angry, yet just confused, worried about appearances. I imagined her pacing around the country club, phone to her ear, fake smile plastered on while explaining, "He's probably on his way." But I wasn't. I ladled the chili into a bowl and sat on the back porch, wrapped in Joanne's old shawl, watching the trees shift in the breeze. There were no candles, no cake, no cameras. Just me and a full heart. The phone buzzed again. I silenced it. By 3:00 p.m., the calls stopped. I suppose she got the message. I sat there in the quiet, the chili warm in my stomach, the wind soft against my cheek. A bird landed on the fence post, looked at me for a moment, and flew away. For the first time in I don't know how long, I felt still. No guilt, no pressure, no measuring my worth by how much I gave or how much she noticed. Just peace. It wasn't loud. It didn't come with fireworks or some cinematic swell of music. It came like dusk, slow and certain, the kind of quiet that doesn't ask for permission, it just arrives. I thought about all the times I'd bent over backward to be included. All the explanations I'd rehearsed, the letters I'd torn up, the birthdays I'd spent waiting for a phone call that never came. All of it seemed far away now. I hadn't abandoned her. I had simply stopped abandoning myself. As the sun dipped low behind the trees, I poured myself a glass of wine, nothing fancy, just something from the fridge, and toasted no one in particular. To finally choosing peace, I whispered, and I meant it. The next morning I found 3 new voicemails waiting. 2 were hang-ups, 1 wasn't. I sat at the kitchen table with my coffee, listening with the phone pressed to my ear like it might burn me. The message started mid-breath. Rachel was already angry before the beep even gave her permission. "You embarrassed me. What kind of father skips his grandchild's celebration? Do you have any idea what people said when you didn't show up? They asked if you were okay, if we were estranged." I had to smile through all of it and make excuses for you like I always do. I've never been so humiliated. She kept going. "You don't get to pick and choose when to be a parent. You don't get to disappear and then act like you're the victim. This wasn't about you, it was about family. But maybe you never really got what that means." The message ended not with a goodbye, not with silence, but with a tight, breathless scoff, like she'd run out of anger for the moment, but not for good. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I just sat there, staring at the steam rising from my mug, letting her voice settle like dust. All heat, no light. The part that stuck with me wasn't the anger. It was that she'd said, "I disappeared." No, Rachel, I was there, every year, every holiday, every moment you needed me even when you didn't deserve it. I didn't disappear. I just stopped showing up to be disrespected. After her message finished, I sat with the phone in my hand, staring at the screen. One finger hovered over the replay button. I listened once more. Just to be sure I hadn't misheard. I hadn't. Then I deleted it. No hesitation. I scrolled through my saved voicemails, the ones I always meant to clean out but never did. Most were junk. 1 from the dentist, 2 from Ethan years back. Then I found it. "Joanne, The file was dated February 13, 2006. I clicked play. Hey Honor, just wanted to say I love you. Rachel's got that science fair tomorrow. Don't forget her model volcano. It's in the garage behind the paint cans. I put a sticky note on your lunchbox too, but I figured you'd forget to check that. Anyway, we love you. Come home safe. That was it. 37 seconds of love, of life, of real family. I sat there holding the phone to my ear like it was made of porcelain. I knew every word of that message, could recite it in my sleep. But hearing it again, her voice, her laugh when she said sticky note was like sunlight through a crack in the clouds. I saved the message to a backup folder, then another, sent it to myself in an email just to be safe. That was the voice I wanted to remember, not the one yelling through the phone, demanding performances and payments. That was the love I'd built my life around. Rachel had become noise. Joanne was still music. Her name was Linda. She'd been my sister's best friend growing up back in the days when kids played outside until the streetlights came on and no one locked their doors. She'd moved out of state, married, divorced, and now she was back in town, temporarily. Though the way she said it, I could tell she wasn't in a hurry to leave again. She dropped by unannounced one afternoon with a tray of lemon squares and a smile that hadn't aged a day, even if the lines around her eyes told a different story. We sat on the porch like two old lawn ornaments, watching the breeze sway the neighbor's laundry. I offered her coffee. She asked for bourbon instead. I obliged. So, she said, cutting a square and dusting the crumbs from her hands, I hear Rachel's having a baby. I nodded. And that you weren't at the shower. I didn't flinch. Didn't seem like I was invited so much as summoned. Linda sipped slowly. You were always too good at giving people the benefit of the doubt, David, even when they stopped deserving it. We sat in silence for a moment, the kind only old friends can sit in comfortably. I know what it's like, she added. My daughter hasn't spoken to me in 5 years. Last thing she said to me was, your love always came with conditions. I still don't even know what that meant. Did it? She gave a sad little laugh. I think the only condition I had was asking her to pick up after herself and maybe call once a month. I nodded, understanding. Linda looked at me then, eyes sharp as ever. Being a good parent doesn't mean being a doormat. You can love someone and still say, no more. That's not cruelty, that's survival. I didn't respond right away, just clinked the ice in my glass. Some words don't need responses, just room to echo. The cafe on Main Street isn't fancy. They overtoast the bagels and the chairs wobble if you don't pick the right one. But it's ours. Locals pass through like clockwork retirees, teachers, the guy who sharpens knives out of his truck. I'd taken to sitting there on Wednesday mornings, same as always, just me, a crossword and a lukewarm cup of community. One morning, Judith woman who runs the flower shop asked how Rachel was doing. She's pregnant, I said, due soon. You must be thrilled, she said. I shrugged. You'd think. A few minutes later, Mike from the hardware store slid into the booth across from me. Heard about the shower. Don't worry, he said with a wink. Not everyone measures love by RSVPs. I chuckled. You've got kids, Mike? 3. Only hear from one of them. The other 2 think I'm a relic. Apparently, I traumatized them by making them mow the lawn. We both laughed. Then Judy came back over. My son moved to Oregon, said he needed space from family dynamics. Hasn't called in over a year. Within 10 minutes, 4 people had chimed in. Stories of grown children who stopped calling, who sent requests but no thanks, who only remembered birthdays when they needed help with rent. Each story was different, but they all shared the same quiet grief. A kind of mourning you can't wear black for. I didn't feel vindicated. I didn't feel smug. I just felt seen. We weren't bitter people. We were parents who gave everything and quietly realized it might never come back the same way. Maybe peace isn't about resolution. Maybe it's just about knowing you're not alone in the ache. The text came 3 days after the shower. Middle of the afternoon, right when I was in the backyard trimming the rose bush Joanne had planted the summer before she passed. It buzzed in my pocket. I wiped my hands, half expecting another receipt or a guilt-laced demand. Instead, Rachel. I guess I overreacted. 7 words. No punctuation, no greeting, no apology. Really just a deflection with a bow on it. I stared at it for a long time. No Dad. No, I'm sorry. No recognition of what she said at the barbecue, of the voicemails, of the years of silence punctuated only by need. Just, I guess. It wasn't that I expected poetry, or tears, or some grand gesture, but I'd hoped for something more human, more sincere, something that said, I see you, I hurt you, and I want to fix it. Instead, it read like a formality, a checkbox, damage control for a bridge she thought she might still need to walk across again someday. I typed and deleted a dozen replies. Thought about calling, thought about ignoring it. In the end, I simply responded, me. I appreciate the message. I hope the baby's doing well. That was it. No warmth, no cold, just neutral. It felt strange at first, but then it felt like freedom, because I finally realized I don't need an apology to move forward. I just need to stop waiting for one. The lawyer's office smelled like pine and printer toner. It hadn't changed much in the last 10 years. Same chairs, same 2 white walls, same clock, ticking a little too loud. Martin, my attorney, was kind enough to offer coffee. I declined. I was there for clarity, not comfort. I'd like to make some changes to the will, I said, setting down the old folder he'd given me when we first drafted it. He nodded. Is this about your daughter? In a way, I said. We went through the documents slowly. I crossed out Rachel's name in 3 sections showing inheritance. Savings, personal belongings, not in anger, not as punishment. Just correction. Instead, I asked him to set up a small trust for the child, my grandchild, whom I might never meet. The money would be released on their 18th birthday, no earlier. And only if used for education or medical needs. No strings, no speeches, just something to say, someone was thinking of you, even when your mother wasn't thinking of him. Martin gave me a look. You sure about this? I'm sure I won't live forever, I said. But if there's even a chance that baby grows up with more kindness than its mother shows, I want to give them a head start. He nodded, made the notes. I initialed the margins with steady hands. It felt clean, not spiteful, not vindictive, just right. When we finished, Martin slid the new copy across the desk. Anything else? I paused, then said, put this in writing, tune the record. I have loved my daughter deeply, but love doesn't mean allowing someone to rewrite the truth. And that truth was finally clear. I could still care, and still let go. He wrote the letter on a rainy afternoon. Not at his desk, not on a computer, but by hand, in a leather-bound notebook Joanne had once given him for their anniversary. He hadn't used it much, but it felt right for this. Dear little one, we haven't met, and maybe we never will. But if this letter ever finds you, I want you to know something right from the start. You were never the problem. None of this what happened with your mother and my is your fault. Your mom is smart, strong-willed. She was a bright kid with a fire in her chest and a laugh that used to fill this house. Somewhere along the way, life changed her. Or maybe it changed both of us. Maybe grief pulled us in different directions after your grandmother died. Maybe she needed more from me than I knew how to give. I tried, sweetheart. I really did. I raised her the best I could. I packed lunches, worked double shifts, sat through school plays with sawdust on my boots. I showed up even when it hurt, especially when it hurt. But love, real love, has to go both ways. And after a while, I realized I was the only one reaching. I chose to stop chasing. Not because I stopped loving her, but because I started remembering that I mattered too. You should know, I've set aside something for you, a little bit of help for your future. It's not a bribe, it's not an apology. It's just a quiet act of hope. Hope that one day you'll grow up kind, curious, brave, that maybe someone will hand you this letter and you'll read it not with bitterness, but with understanding. And maybe you'll think, he didn't abandon us, He made a choice. And you'd be right. With all my heart, David, or Grandpa, if that word ever finds its way to you. He folded the pages carefully, slipped them into a manila envelope, and wrote on the front, "For the child, when the time is right." Then he placed it in the safe, next to Joanne's ring. He found out, through a picture. Someone tagged someone else on Facebook, and his sister happened to see it. She sent it to him with a short message. "Thought you might want to know." He didn't have a Facebook account, so she printed it and brought it over in person. There it was, Rachel, in a hospital gown, hair pulled back, cradling a newborn wrapped in a sea of pastel blankets. Her boyfriend, or maybe husband, now stood beside her with that dazed, proud look all new fathers wear. Rachel looked tired, but not unhappy. The caption said, "Welcome to the world, Mason. 7 pounds 14 ounce. You are so loved." He read it 3 times. No mention of grandparents. No phone call, no text. Not even a one-line message to say he's here. He held the photo in both hands, studying the child's face. Couldn't tell who he looked like yet, but the tiny fingers, the wrinkled brow, it hit him in a place he thought had gone numb. He smiled, quietly. No bitterness, just acceptance. "Welcome, Mason," he whispered. Then he stood, walked to the fridge, and pinned the photo there with a magnet. Right next to a much older one, Rachel's first birthday. Chocolate cake on her cheeks, Joanne laughing in the background. 2 photos. 2 generations. One man, standing quietly in between, no longer trying to hold on. Just learning how to let go and love anyway. Legacy isn't money. It's not a name carved into granite or a plaque on a building. It's the small things you leave behind that carry your spirit forward. That's what he realized one morning while flipping through Joanne's old recipe cards. Her handwriting was soft, slanted a little curl at every lowercase g. He stopped at her lemon pie recipe, then the one for chili, marked with grease spots and smiley faces in Rachel's childhood scrawl. He didn't want those memories stored in boxes anymore. He wanted them living. So he made a call. The local community college accepted his donation without hesitation. A modest scholarship in Joanne's name awarded each year to a single parent returning to school. He chose the criteria himself: resilient, kind, quietly determined. Then he started showing up at the community center down the street, not for recognition, just to be useful. He helped kids with homework, hammered loose nails into the play structure, taught a couple of teenagers how to change a tire. He didn't talk much about Rachel, but when people asked if he had kids, he said, "1, grown now." Then he'd smile and change the subject. The emptiness that had shadowed him for years began to shrink. Not disappear, but shrink, replaced by something else, something rooted in action. Love, he realized, doesn't always have to go where it's directed. Sometimes it just needs somewhere to land. Evenings were his favorite. When the sun dipped low and the sky turned that quiet shade of purple-blue that made the world feel soft and far away. He sat on the porch, wrapped in Joanne's shawl, with a mug of tea resting warm in his hands. The house was quiet, clean, steady, full of memories that no longer hurt to touch. A light buzzed above the door. The old porch lamp he'd installed himself in 1986 still flickered sometimes, still burned steady. He left it on, as he always had. Not because he was waiting. He wasn't. He had stopped checking the driveway, stopped holding his breath every time the phone buzzed. He no longer rehearsed what he'd say if Rachel ever showed up again. But the porch light stayed on anyway. Not out of hope, out of habit, out of love. Because love, real love, isn't a performance. It doesn't require an audience or applause. Sometimes it just sits quietly on a porch at dusk, not waiting, just ready if needed. He leaned back in the chair, listening to the cicadas rise in chorus. A breath escaped him long and low. He was at peace. The door wasn't closed, but he was no longer standing at it. This story was intense, but this story on the right-hand side is even more insane.